Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Iris Williamson. I direct and curate at New Harmony Gallery for Contemporary Art. Thank you so much for coming today. I want to welcome Melanie Cooper Pennington. She's our artist for our first artist of 2023. We're really excited to have her. She's going to be giving a kind of a walkthrough discussion. So that's why there aren't many chairs out here. But if you need a chair, please let us know. It's Tanya or Ashley know, and we're happy to provide one. But that's kind of the reason, is that we expect people to kind of move around a little bit, but we do understand that balance. So just reach out if you need one. Other than that, I just wanted to say, yeah, thanks so much for coming, and I'll hand it over to Melanie.
Thank you, Iris, so much. I've been so excited to do this. I was introduced to Iris a year ago, maybe more. Yeah. All right. The back tour. And thank you to University of Southern Indiana and New Harmony Contemporary Gallery of Art. Thank you. And thank you all for coming, especially those who drove so far. I just am completely stunned. I've got a student here. What? I've got two students here. Extra credit. So, yeah, okay. Welcome to Climb In and Back Out Again. This is a show of mostly recent works that I've done since this summer, except for the large furry beast behind you, which is from 2015, and this piece here, Sleep in the Boat, from 2019. But everything else, except for maybe a current piece or two, is new. So, what can I tell you about the work? The title comes from kind of how I move through life, which I've always found it a little bit of a struggle to be a human. I have a very sensitive nature. I've struggled with depression, and I'm not the type A person that that gets out of bed and, with a spring in her step every morning. So I have to kind of work at it. And I also, one of the ways that I've gotten myself through a lot of my grief and sadness in life is to kind of move those feelings and the way I'm trying to process things out of my body into something that I can see and understand. So I put form to what I'm feeling. More students, all right. Hello, my sweet friends. So happy to see you. Yeah, so that's, since I started sculpting, which was when I was 19 years old, that has been my method. Another question that comes to me frequently is, why all these hoops? Why the beast form? What is the beast about? And I am originally a figure sculptor, so I started sculpting the figure when I was 19, and sculpted it, learning from, I was hoping maybe after college I would go to graduate school, but things didn't, oh my goodness, more students. Sorry, I'm just distracted. I'm like, squirrel. Hi, yay. Okay, this is just so cool. I feel so honored. I was working as an interior designer in Chicago right after college, but I wanted to keep learning about the figure. So what I did is I went to Colorado and I studied with the Western cowboy artists of the Wild West, basically. So I would go for a week at a time. I had small children, leave them with the family, and sculpt my heart out because they really respected the figure, and I could learn anatomy in like short and intense bursts. But what I found, and part of why I decided to go to graduate school later in life, was because I was wanted to push myself beyond a simple representation, narrative representation using the body. And where that led me to was looking at large, massive mammalian forms. I was in love with another influence, and part of what I talk about in my statement is these very masculine influences in my art-making life that I am now questioning, but the Remingtons, the Rodins, the modernists, Henry Moore, Brancusi, I mean, they're all just amazing, but I have been, as I grow, looking more at the Louise Bourgeois and the feminine to try and notice that the way I work with materials has a more feminine intent and is more expressive of my emotions. I'm also more, I think, willing to put them out there. So that, have I explained the beast yet? I don't know that I've totally explained the beast yet, but I found that my initial work, when I was kind of launching away from straight narrative figurative work, I decided to highlight and use the aspects of the human body that I found the most powerful and that best represented my feelings. And for me, that was like a shoulder, a slumped back, a jutting hip. There were certain parts that were very sensual and very expressive. And I also really was responding to the largeness that you can get in elephants, bison, whales, and noticing how they are still very vulnerable. So that juxtaposition between their massive strength, but still their vulnerability. I was like, that's how I feel inside. I feel like I have the potential for a lot of strength, and I want that, and so I was making these big animal forms to kind of bring forward that strength in myself. But then all of my beasts are usually in vulnerable positions because it's this constant struggle back and forth between feeling strong and feeling like I need help. Somebody just put me in a basket and rock me until I'm strong again. This is a sleep in a boat. So this is a mama beast, and you are allowed to rock the mama beast. You're also allowed to hug. This one is called In Support of the Other, Interdependence, baby Caitlin. Because, but nothing else. No more talking. Anything else. Just those two things. And just you, probably. You're special because you're here and you're watching. But, so this piece is about resting in the midst of something great happening inside you, right? And you're not quite sure what that is, and it's frankly terrifying, but you've got, someone's here helping you out, and something marvelous is gonna come into the world. It was after doing this piece, this is probably the piece that launched everything else, because I was watching a lot of animal births, and if you notice on the baby coming out here, I was fascinated by the gelatin covering on baby hoof feet, because there's a protection to the mother in the womb that just blows my mind, right? You see these like wild animals with their long hooves, and you're like, that's gotta come. I mean, I've had children, and it's weird. So this was kind of a response to that, but these hooves were quite precious to me, and that protection that's offered to mothers in the midst of such labor is, I think, really powerful. And from there, because I was watching all these weird birds, I also got to see a lot of little baby animals start to try to walk. And that awkwardness, right? We've all seen it, and it's very identifiable. It's just like, you know, it really resonated with something in me, because it's just freaking how I feel pretty much all the time, even right now. So I started to make some toddlers, is what I call them, and these just, beasts moving in awkward positions, not sure if they're coming or going, but always kind of in motion. And then I noticed that I was making beasts in relation to other beasts. And I think kind of the theme of this year, and maybe since COVID, is this like, I rely so heavily on my friends and family. I need them quite desperately to just like keep moving all the time. So I think that could be part of what's bringing the more and more. And then we, of course, because I'm constantly tumbling, this one I call my own private purgatory. I'm so embarrassed. My butt is in the air all the time, you know. I'm showing you my longing and my vulnerability and my own struggle just to move through the world. But I kind of get stronger when I do. And I get stronger and I get more help from my friends when I reach out and talk about it. And they know that. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. And I'm totally happy to answer questions, I think.
Could you speak about your transition into drawing? Because you're like, you have your sculpture so much like central part of your practice. So this has been like a big step, I think, with kind of drawing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, I haven't been much, I've struggled to draw as an artist, and when I discovered I could sculpt, so I drew when I was young, but when I found out I could like pick up a piece of clay and do actually everything like 5 times easier for me, I stopped drawing. And I know Michelangelo says you gotta draw, but I just was like, no, I don't wanna do it. But I needed an entry point back into sculpture after the last few years. I was just emotionally exhausted. I was creatively exhausted from teaching and pandemic and everything, and I needed to find a way back into my creative process, and I needed it to not weigh 200 pounds, and I needed to not have to store it. I needed to, and the commitment to make a piece like this one in total took about a year. Typically my large pieces take about 6 months, as opposed to the drawing I can do in a couple days, and like even moving to clay, I can usually get a clay piece done in a few weeks. So what I've allowed myself to do more recently is I'm just trying to build back my studio muscles, because I just needed that, is I let myself draw. And then I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I mean, I'm not that good at it, but I can do it my way, you know, and I love color, but I've never added color to my sculptures. So I really feel like a toddler with drawing, 100% total toddler drawing. But I ended up liking them, and so I'm showing them, and I don't know. They just come out. My mom thinks I'm just loose. She like doesn't understand any of it, but I love you, Mom. So that's where the drawing's good.
Are there other questions? Debbie?
You mentioned color briefly, because I noticed how colorful your drawings are and the difference with your sculptures. I'm curious if you can tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've really avoided all color. I mean, I'm in sculpt, that's not true. I say super neutral in my sculpting. The latest discovery, and the last one I did, was this one over here.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Caitlin. She suggested that I use pastels for my coloration, and I like had to pull myself back because I was like, oh, if I go too nuts, it won't go with anything in the show. So I decided that maybe start using color, in little bits.
You did in the corner
Wow.
on the shelf.
Oh, I know. Well, it's because I went a little nuts. I did the pastels on that one. I did that one last year.
I love it.
Okay, yeah. So you. That's good. Yeah. question if you want. Well, typically I will, if I'm building a sculpture, I'll first have created it maquette size. And then I go through a process of imagining, and sometimes I'll make a little figure and set it next to my maquette, and at different scales, to begin to imagine, first of all, how big should this piece be to communicate whatever the feeling of intimidation or warmth or approachability versus not approachability. So I use that and that my imagination first to decide scale. That's first the most important. And then I go into how warm and fuzzy, or how touchable versus untouchable, I think. And then there's just a whole host of materials you get to choose from, you know. And then how durable. I don't like to use real fur, so I use faux fur. Yeah, it's kind of like, I want the materials to almost disappear. So it's a constant dance of trying to figure out how am I not going to notice, but notice at the same time. And I like the classic sculpture materials, like plaster. That white is just so like fresh.
Any other questions, or?
Have you always been so open about like the meaning behind your work and being vulnerable about that?
Maybe always the answer. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think so. Not from have I?
Yeah.
You can't help it.
I can't help it. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of an open book. Yeah. I yes. It's how I roll.
Was there a mindfulness about moving away from big pieces to more delicate, like the hooks became more elongated and delicate? Is that mindful?
Subconsciously, a transition did happen that I feel like I've only become aware of through talking things out with my friends this year. But yeah, I think I kind of was leaning into the massive forms as a way of having more strength, almost like a sense of masculinity within myself too. And I think this year there's been more of an acceptance of my female personhood, and kind of just trying to not subscribe to what I think will be valued and respected. I think that I have had a lot of heartache about the inequality of just women's experience, and my own shame that I feel subconsciously sometimes just for being someone with a lot of emotion. And I wasn't even aware that I was trying to hide that, you know? So it's hard to shift, it's hard. I do feel very vulnerable showing more vulnerable work. But I think that's our strength, that's my strength. So yeah, I'm trying to get more comfortable and increase my capacity to let things be beautiful and gentle and delicate, which is also fucking strong. So, yeah.
Have you ever used images from your own dreams or active imaginations? You know, prompted imaginations or dreams?
No, but what I have found in the drawings is that it feels like a dream.
Yeah, it looks like it.
When it comes out, I'm like, where did that come from? It feels like a dream. I don't quite know where it is. Well, thank you all so much. I'll talk to you.